came to Roanoke, like a lot of businesses come to a city, there was an economic development incentive. The people who lived here in Roanoke got together and offered some money to help the railroad build a headquarters here. So they got together in the night, met around a table, pooled their money, and handed it off to a horseman who rode his horse through the night to the board meeting of the railroad the next morning. And about 8 o'clock the next morning, they decided and voted that the railroad should come to Roanoke. And this has been a great place for a Roanoke Railroad headquarters. Roanoke wouldn't be here. It was a sleepy little town when the railroad first came. It was called Big Lick. It was just a little place. The railroad decided that wasn't a great name for a railroad capital, so the town changed its name to Roanoke. But all of the businesses that are here grew up because of the railroad. The hospital is here because the railroad needed doctors for its employees. The churches are here because railroad employees wanted someplace to worship. The Hotel Roanoke, which is a beautiful hotel here in Roanoke, was a railroad hotel.
Big Lick city fathers said, we will host this railroad, we will welcome them here, but we're going to have to move the city a little bit farther. And so it was moved about 1.5 miles. This was the hub of transportation. This was the point at which all transportation, both passenger and freight, would continue on. And it really caused the growth and the metropolitan development of the city. Everything was needed, from manual labor to track laying to maintenance of way to offices. So this became a microcosm of a culture right here.
Changed in so many ways. They used to be so much smaller and slower. When they were first built, the first trains were running in America out of Baltimore, Maryland. They have become more and more powerful, more and more able to pull heavier loads, longer distances. The technology has changed both in the engines and in the kinds of cars. O. Winston Link was a really gifted, really incredible photographer who was from Brooklyn, New York, and he had a vision to understand a lot of things in America, and he loved trains, particularly our Class A 1218. But he recognized how different the world was going to be once there were no longer any steam trains. So he came from Brooklyn down here to this part of Virginia and set up amazing banks of light so that he could capture the movement of trains at night, and he would capture the life in communities as trains went by. And he did amazing photography of local individuals who were living alongside the tracks and the trains that made their lives the way it was.
Winston Link was a little obsessive. He took 5 years of his life to document the end of steam power, the end of steam locomotives. He knew they were coming, he knew they were going to be ending, and so he spent 5 years just capturing that ending of an era. He made over 2,400 negatives during the time period. He created about 60 hours of audio recordings and even some film too, trying to capture every part of the end of that era.
We've heard a lot about what trains have done for Roanoke, but what would Roanoke be like without those changes?
But Roanoke exists because there were trains. It would be an entirely different place. It would probably be a small town, maybe 2 or 3 stoplights by now. We wouldn't have hospitals here, we wouldn't have museums, probably the symphony, the opera, all the cultural organizations.
I think it would be a point that trains had stopped in the past. Probably would have
The railroad has done a lot for Roanoke. Without the railroad, Roanoke would be a small town named Big Lick. Most people take the railroad for granted, but we think it's very important.